Have you ever replayed a conversation over and over again in your head? Perhaps you said something awkward during a meeting. Perhaps someone looked at you strangely. Perhaps your message was left on read. Or perhaps nothing obvious happened at all. And yet, hours later, your mind is still asking the same question. What do they think about me? It's a remarkably common experience. Most people assume this happens because they lack confidence. But psychology suggests something far more interesting. Your brain may not actually be searching for approval. It may be searching for safety. That sounds strange. After all, how could another person's opinion possibly affect your survival? In today's world, an awkward conversation usually isn't life-threatening. A critical comment on social media won't stop your heart. Being rejected from a group chat isn't the same as starving. Yet your brain often reacts as though social rejection is a genuine emergency. Your stomach tightens. Your heart beats faster. Your thoughts begin racing. You replay every word. You imagine what everyone else must have been thinking. Why? Because your brain is much older than your modern life. For nearly all of human history, survival depended on belonging. Imagine living 30,000 years ago. There were no supermarkets, no hospitals, no police, no apartments where you could simply close the door and ignore everyone else. You survived because your tribe accepted you. If the group hunted together, you ate. If the group protected one another, you stayed alive. If the group rejected you, your chances of surviving alone became dramatically smaller. From an evolutionary perspective, social acceptance wasn't a luxury. It was a survival strategy. Your nervous system learned this lesson long before money existed, long before cities, long before the internet, long before civilization itself. Generation after generation, the human brain became extraordinarily sensitive to signs of social approval and social rejection. A strange facial expression, a change in someone's voice, a lack of eye contact, being excluded from a conversation. These weren't simply emotional experiences. Thousands of years ago, they could have predicted something much more serious: isolation. And isolation often meant death. Today, that ancient prediction system is still running. Only the environment has changed. Instead of worrying whether the tribe will abandon you around a campfire, your brain worries about Instagram likes, workplace conversations, text messages, job interviews, public speaking, dating, comments from strangers you've never met. The situations are different. The survival system isn't. This explains something fascinating. Sometimes a single critical remark from one person can outweigh 20 compliments from everyone else. Why? Because your brain isn't designed to maximize happiness. It's designed to detect possible threats. Psychologists call this negativity bias. Negative information captures attention much faster than positive information. Imagine walking into a room where 99 people smile at you. One person frowns. Which face will your brain remember? Probably the frown. Not because you're pessimistic. Because your prediction system assumes the unusual signal deserves investigation. Maybe that person dislikes you. Maybe you've done something wrong. Maybe your social position is becoming unstable. Your brain immediately begins collecting evidence. Not because it enjoys making you anxious, because uncertainty has always been dangerous. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus understood this long before neuroscience existed. He observed that people are disturbed not by events themselves, but by the judgments they make about those events. In other words, the problem isn't necessarily that someone frowned. The problem is the story your mind immediately creates afterward. They think I'm stupid. I embarrassed myself. I'll never recover from this. They're probably talking about me right now. Notice something interesting. None of those are observations. They're predictions. And the human brain is a prediction machine. It is constantly trying to guess what will happen next before reality arrives. Sometimes that ability protects us. Sometimes it quietly imprisons us. The more uncertain the social situation becomes, the more stories the brain begins inventing. And the strange part, most of those stories are never verified. We simply believe them because they feel emotionally convincing. Which raises a deeper question. If your brain evolved to care so deeply about what other people think, why do some people eventually stop caring? What changes inside them that allows criticism to lose its power? That answer begins with one of the biggest psychological illusions we all experience every single day. Most people believe confidence comes from becoming impressive, getting the promotion, making more money, looking better, speaking perfectly, becoming so successful that criticism simply stops. But there's a problem with that strategy. It never ends. Because every time you improve, your brain quietly raises the standard. You become fitter. Now you compare yourself with even fitter people. You become more successful. Now you compare yourself with even more successful people. You become more confident. Now you worry about losing that confidence. The finish line keeps moving. And so does your dependence on other people's opinions. Psychologists call this the spotlight effect. It describes our tendency to dramatically overestimate how much other people notice us. Imagine walking into work with a tiny coffee stain on your shirt. To you, it feels enormous. You assume everyone must have seen it. You spend the entire morning trying to hide it. Later that day, someone asks how your weekend was. Not a single person mentions the stain. Because most people never noticed. Why? Because they were busy thinking about themselves, just as you were. This realization can feel almost disappointing. The world isn't watching you nearly as closely as you imagine. Not because people don't care, because they're running the exact same psychological program. They're wondering whether you noticed their mistakes, whether you judged their appearance, whether you thought they sounded awkward. Everyone is standing under what feels like a giant spotlight, while almost nobody is actually looking. Think about the last embarrassing thing someone else did. How long did you think about it? Perhaps a few minutes? Maybe an hour? Now think about your own last embarrassing moment. Your brain may have replayed it for weeks, not because it mattered more objectively, but because your brain stores information about your social survival with much higher priority. Your nervous system treats your reputation like a precious resource, and every awkward interaction feels like a possible threat to that resource. This is where Stoicism offers a radically different perspective. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled one of the largest empires in history, wrote something surprisingly simple. You ask what people are saying about you. Why not ask instead whether what they're saying is true? Notice the shift. Most of us automatically ask, do they like me? Marcus replaces that question with another. Is there anything useful here? Those are completely different mental habits. The first gives your emotional state to other people. The second keeps it in your own hands. Imagine receiving criticism at work. Your first reaction might be immediate defensiveness. They don't appreciate me. They're attacking me. They don't understand how hard I worked. But suppose you paused, not to suppress the emotion, not to pretend it didn't hurt, just long enough to ask one simple question. What part of this is information, and what part is only my interpretation? Perhaps the criticism is accurate. Wonderful. Now you've learned something. Perhaps it's completely unfair. Also useful. Because now you've learned something about the other person instead. Either way, reality becomes clearer. Suffering becomes smaller. The Stoics never argued that criticism feels pleasant. They argued that suffering increases when we confuse someone else's opinion with objective truth. And modern psychology largely agrees. Researchers studying cognitive distortions have found that anxious minds consistently make predictable thinking errors. Mind reading. We assume we know exactly what someone else thinks. Fortune telling. We predict rejection before it happens. Catastrophizing. We imagine one awkward moment destroying our entire reputation. None of these processes involve evidence. They involve prediction. Your brain fills missing information with imagined certainty. Ironically, the less information you actually have, the more confidently your anxious mind invents a story. A coworker doesn't smile. They're angry. A friend replies hours later. They're losing interest. Someone walks past without saying hello. They must dislike me. Notice what happened. Reality lasted only a few seconds. Everything afterward came from imagination. This is why emotionally resilient people often appear fearless, not because they receive less criticism, not because everyone likes them, but because they've learned to separate facts from stories. Someone ignored them. Fact. They secretly hate me. Story. Someone disagreed. Fact. I'm a failure. Story. Someone looked serious. Fact. I've done something wrong. Story. Once you begin noticing that distinction, something extraordinary happens. The opinions of other people begin losing their invisible authority, because you finally realize most of your suffering was never created by their judgment. It was created by your prediction of their judgment. And if predictions can be questioned, perhaps they don't deserve to control your life. But this still leaves one important question. If our brains are naturally wired to seek approval, Is it actually possible to stop caring what other people think? Or are we simply fighting against millions of years of evolution? The answer is far more hopeful than most people imagine. The truth is, you will probably never stop caring what other people think. And that's okay, because that was never the goal. The goal isn't to eliminate your social instincts. The goal is to stop letting them make your decisions. Think about learning to drive. At first, every sound feels important. Every passing car seems dangerous. Every mistake feels catastrophic. But after years of experience, something changes. You still notice the traffic. You simply stop believing that every signal requires panic. The same transformation can happen with social judgment. The voice inside your head may never disappear completely. It may still whisper, "What if they don't like you? What if you embarrass yourself? What if you fail?" The difference is, you no longer mistake that voice for reality. You recognize it for what it truly is, an ancient prediction system trying a little too hard to keep you safe. This is one of the deepest ideas within Stoicism. The Stoics never promised freedom from emotion. They promised freedom from becoming ruled by emotion. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that other people's opinions belonged to them. His responsibility was not controlling what others believed. His responsibility was controlling his own character. That distinction changes everything. Because once you stop trying to manage everyone's perception, an extraordinary amount of mental energy becomes available. Think about how much of your day disappears into invisible performance. Choosing words carefully so nobody misunderstands you. Replaying conversations. Editing messages again and again. Wondering whether you sounded intelligent enough, interesting enough, successful enough, kind enough, attractive enough. All of it comes from one hidden belief. If people approve of me, I'll finally feel safe. But approval has a dangerous characteristic. It expires. Someone compliments you today. Tomorrow you need another compliment. Someone praises your work. Soon you worry whether your next project will disappoint them. Approval creates temporary relief, not permanent peace. The Stoics understood that anything dependent upon other people can never become a stable foundation for happiness. Because other people are unpredictable. Their moods change, their preferences change, their opinions change, sometimes without any connection to you at all. If your peace depends on something constantly changing, then your peace must constantly change as well. Modern psychology reaches a remarkably similar conclusion. Research on self-worth consistently shows a difference between contingent self-esteem and secure self-esteem. Contingent self-esteem depends on external validation, success, popularity, appearance, status, achievements. Secure self-esteem grows from something much quieter. The knowledge that your worth doesn't fluctuate every time someone approves or disapproves of you. That doesn't mean ignoring feedback. It means refusing to confuse feedback with identity. One mistake doesn't make you incompetent. One rejection doesn't make you unlovable. One criticism doesn't define your character. They're experiences, not identities. Perhaps that's why some of the calmest people you've ever met aren't the ones who receive the least criticism. They're the ones who stopped treating criticism as a verdict. Instead, they treat it as information, sometimes useful, sometimes inaccurate, but never powerful enough to determine who they are. And perhaps this is the quiet freedom Stoicism has always pointed toward. Not becoming fearless, not becoming emotionless, not becoming indifferent to other people, but becoming anchored somewhere deeper than their opinions. Because people will misunderstand you. Some will dislike you. Some will criticize decisions they don't fully understand. Some will project their own fears onto your life. And none of those things are entirely within your control. What is within your control is whether you allow those voices to become louder than your own. The next time you find yourself lying awake replaying a conversation, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, what actually happened? Then ask, what story did my brain add afterward? That single distinction may change far more than you expect. Because most of the time, you aren't suffering from another person's opinion. You're suffering from your prediction of it. And predictions can be questioned. They can be tested. They can be ignored. Perhaps real confidence was never the absence of self-consciousness. Perhaps real confidence is simply the willingness to keep acting, even while your ancient brain continues whispering, "What will they think?" Because eventually, you realize something profoundly liberating. People were never thinking about you as much as you imagine. And the few who truly matter were never asking you to become perfect in the first place.